Hello, bonjour, namaste. Welcome to the Canada and India show, where we meet the people that make up the vibrant Canada-India relationship. Every week, we interview leaders in their fields to dive into who they are and what drives them. From the arts, to trade, to human rights, we will discover together how rich and diverse this relationship really is.
Hi, I'm Annie Dubé, Canada's Consul General in Mumbai, India, and you are listening to the Canada in India show. Thank you for joining us. In today's episode, we are talking about toilets, Indiana Jones, and the potential of the Indian market. Sounds interesting, right? And that's because you'll hear from Sanjay Deshpande, who heads Clearford operations. Clearford is a water management company headquartered in Canada. It delivers innovative water and wastewater technologies with full solution design, deployment, operations, and project finance solutions. This Canadian company has been working in India since 2012. Sanjay Deshpande is the executive director and head of operations. His focus is bringing the 21st century approach to decentralized sewage. This will benefit the millions of Indians without access to proper sanitation infrastructure. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining us on the Canada in India show. We're very excited to have you on board.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
You head the Clearford operations, and I would love to hear from you first what Clearford here is, because it's a Canadian company that is very successful here in India. But I would love to have your sense of what Clearford means for you.
Sure. Clearford, like you said, is a Canadian company based in Ottawa. We have a very unusual offering. We actually design and collect, transport, and treat sewage. Now, why that's important is, well, take India, for example. Most of India doesn't have sewer networks. There are issues with the water supply. If you don't have enough water and you have a poor distribution network, sewage cannot be transported to a treatment plant. So we have a technology that allows us to do it, irregardless of how much water is being supplied. So I can put it in a remote village and I can put it in a city. So it's something that is a unique proposition, and it's something that's very needed in India.
And so for how long has Clearford been in India?
Well, Clearford's been in India since 2012. We went through the entire process that most companies do. We talked about our technology, then we got it approved into the government system. So once it got into the government system, it was easier to get projects because they had literally a stamp of approval in a government document. So once that happened, we started doing projects. Our first project was funded by CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility, in a tribal village of all places in Gujarat. And that was a dramatically different project from anything Clearford had ever done.
Okay.
And we learned a lot.
Why was it so different?
Well, it's a tribal village. We had to deal with people who had never used toilets, for example. They didn't have toilets. They knew what they wanted. People, even in remote tribal villages, are very aspirational. They want a better life, if not for themselves, for their children. So we used to talk to them regularly. We tried to understand what their requirements were. We didn't want to impose our technology on them. We had to adapt it to their actual requirements. So we talked to them. We learned a lot of things that we didn't expect. We had been always told, and it's on the news and all, that it's important to build toilets because, for example, women, it's a safety issue. They're going out into the bushes and all, rape and things like that are common. So when we talked to the villagers, we found initially there were two groups of people who were opposed to having toilets. One was men over the age of 65, 70, simply because they were habituated to going outside. They didn't want to use the toilet. And the other one, surprisingly, was girls in the age bracket of 14 to 17, which was something we didn't expect at all. And it turned out that they told us that we don't want toilets because if we have toilets, then our mothers will make us use them. And we can't spend time talking to each other out in the bushes. We'll be having to do things at home all the time. So it was something quite unexpected.
So it's the social component of using toilets that
That's
was missing.
Right. So then that was one thing. And then we found out that In villages, women are literally the driving force of the village. The men are out working in the cities, out in the fields and all. The women run the village. So to get our system in, we started talking to the women. We created a committee, a sanitation committee made up of women. And the women told us what they wanted, how to do it, what their requirements were. And they said, we love your idea of toilets, but give us a bathroom. We said, why do you want a bathroom? Said, well, the toilet, we're going out in the bushes. So we have some privacy. But for the bathroom, we're in the village, in the backyard, between 4 poles and a cloth wrapped around it. There's no privacy. So once we offered them a bathroom and a toilet, they were fully supportive. We put in the system. It's been 3 years now, and the villages are operating it on their own. They're paying for the cost of operations. They're maintaining it beautifully, everything. Toilets, bathrooms, the sewer network, the treatment plant, everything is working perfectly.
How do you see the quality of life for the people in the village? Has it changed drastically?
It has indeed. If you look at that particular village, before we got in, according to our client, which was a MNC called ILNFS out of Mumbai, they did a survey and they found that pretty much every household had a couple of cases of diarrhea every month. Especially when it happened to the children or the old people, they had to take them to the hospital. There was a cost borne with all that. People couldn't work during that time. Since we put in our system in the last 3 years, there have been a grand total of 3 cases in the entire village. And all 3 were traced to people eating food at a festival in another village. So it's changed everything. They have more money. If you go to the villages, the vehicles have improved, the houses have improved. Children going to school has improved. When they don't have to spend time taking care of medical expenses, going to another city to take care, they have more opportunity to work. And they have more savings. And that has what literally has changed the village.
I understand. I mean, we see the cities and the facilities are all there, the infrastructures are all there. We need to get out of the cities to understand a bit more the needs for toilets. So in terms of statistics, what does that mean? The population that has access or not to toilets?
Toilets were frankly lacking. Like I said, the issue was water. And there's an expense. If you're out in remote areas, people are poor, they don't have as much money as an urban dweller would have. So the cost of a decent toilet is between 12 and 25,000 rupees, which in Canadian dollars doesn't translate to much, or something like $200 to $500. But that's a lot of money in some parts of India. So the Prime Minister came up with a scheme of giving a subsidy. You build a toilet, we will give you some of the money back if you're below poverty line. So they developed a scheme. India has a unique law. I don't think it's there anywhere else in the world. Companies that make a profit over a certain threshold, 2% of their turnover has to be given as corporate social responsibility. And it just can't give it anyway. There are categories, and sanitation is one of them. So in this drive, which is called Swachh Bharat, a lot of money has gone to building toilets across India. The success failure rate is still being analyzed. In some parts of India, it's much better. There, it's approaching 100%. For example, in the village we did, just because the quality of the toilets and bathrooms we built, it's 100%. Everybody's using them. In fact, villages, people from other towns and all who come to the village to see it, that they use the toilets instead of going back to their hotels and all, because they find the toilets of a standard that they appreciate. So there have been areas where it's close to 100%, and there have been areas where the failure rate is quite high, primarily because there's no water supply. If you have to go a couple of kilometers to get water, then you're not likely to carry it back to your toilet. So there are issues in some places, then there are quality issues and all, but it's a process. At least the amount of people who have been using the outdoors has decreased dramatically.
So since 2012, Clearford has been looking at installing toilets in India. How many toilets have been installed so far?
Well, in terms of CSR, we did that one village, the first one, and we are currently installing in 2 more villages, one in Gujarat and one in the state of Tamil Nadu in South India. By the time these 3 projects are completed, we would probably have sewered in tribal villages something in the order of 500 houses or so in these 3 villages. But we have also branched out in, doing institutions, factories, In fact, one Canadian company is one of our clients, McCain Foods. We have sewered their entire factory in Gujarat, for example.
Oh, fantastic.
So now we have branched out of those. We are now starting to go into larger, smaller towns, urban areas, and all as well.
So what is the future for Clearford in India?
Well, hopefully very rosy.
In terms of economic growth, obviously having access to a toilet, basic necessities, you want the country to do well and to keep doing better. And so Clearford's business model seems to be quite appropriate for the context here in India.
It is, because now even the government is now switching to the next step in the Swachh Bharat drive. The first step was to get everybody to use toilets. Now the next step is what they call ODF plus, outdoor defecation free plus, is to figure out ways of sewering the toilets and all. So there is no chance of groundwater contamination and recycling the water wherever possible. So that is basically our forte. So we hope to be even, to get a piece of that and do a lot more in a much more sustainable manner across the country.
And this is the type of thing that it's hard from a Kenyan perspective to understand. What has been the factors for success and what have been the main challenges?
Well, factors for success is the initial and probably the greatest factor was getting the first one on the ground. Unfortunately, there's so many new technologies and people bringing them to India every day that people in India worry. So we'll adopt this new technology, we'll put it in the ground. But suppose the company leaves India, then how do we maintain it? So that fear is there in the background. So once we got the first one in the ground and people could see how it worked, and the fact that we indigenized it as much as possible, we also made it so that the locals, the beneficiaries, could operate the system. You don't want a system that's so complex that you need specialists to do it, especially when you work in rural India. So we did all of those things. So that was definitely the hardest step, getting the first one in. Once we got it, we started getting a lot of repeat orders. So that's good. The biggest challenge you'd probably face in India, besides that, would probably, how do you manage expectations? When you talk, you're coming Canadian, you're coming with new technology. There are a lot of expectations. But like I said, it has to, if you have something that is not relevant, there's really no point in it.
Innovation and technology that should meet the needs of the population, the local population, and it should be adaptive, basically, right?
Absolutely. And it has to be at a technology that is at the level that people are willing to accept at that time. If you give something that's too far ahead, you're going to be struggling.
It's true. And so from your perspective, where do you see the development of India? Like toilets seems very basic necessity, but there's so much that has been done already on so many other fronts. What are the next steps in terms of developing the rural areas?
Well, probably one of the biggest changes in this country is connectivity. It's not just roads, but think about it. You can go anywhere in India and you'll find even in the remotest villages, people with mobiles. And not only mobile, smartphones. They're busy checking on Google for answers that they require. They may be doing it in the local language, but they're online. Mm-hmm. That's a dramatic change because now, people are no longer in isolated pockets. They're all part of a community. So they know what's out there. And as they're aspirational, they know what to aim for. So that's probably been the greatest change. And that has had its impact on pretty much every field. Whether it's food, whether it's, what do we say in Canada? Keeping up with the Jones. Everybody wants something, It's changed. It's driving a consumer market that's massive.
Half of the population in India is below the age of 25, or even more than half of the population at this point because it's growing quite fast. Like we see the development right now, we're in 2019. What does it mean when half of the population is below the age of 25? How transformative is it going to be for India and what can we expect for the next decade or two?
That is India's greatest strength and it's also greatest possible disaster. Strength because we have a huge talented pool of people that are rising slowly through the system. Where it could be a problem is, well, they have to be employed or they have to be entrepreneurs of some sort. So, I mean, it's a balance. If people cannot find something productive to do, there's going to be trouble. It works both ways. So far, in the villages and all, what I'm seeing in small towns and all, as people are leaving them and migrating to larger towns and cities. And by and large, they are finding something to do. Maybe not the best, but definitely better than they had in the villages. So that has changed. If we can figure out a way of making village life better and reducing some of that migration, there's a possibility that everything will grow even better than it is right now. But the scope is amazing. We are not an export-driven market like China. We are a domestic market like Canada or the US. So most of our trade is internal, which is a great strength. But it will take a bit of balancing to get to where we all want to be.
From your perspective, when you saw Clearfood coming into the Indian market, what would be your best advice for any Canadian company who wants to get into the market?
Come here, figure out the market for yourself. There are a lot of agents who will contact you at trade shows and all. Be careful. Learn the market yourself. I'll tell you a story. It's not from Clearfood, but from before Clearfood. I was putting together a wind farm with some friends of mine. And when we went around looking for the money for the wind farm, we met a lot of people in the US. And their first reaction, okay, you're from India. I said, yes. Where in India? I said, Pune. I said, okay, now you can talk. If you had said Delhi, you'd be out the door. Because everybody in Delhi says that they can get us anything tomorrow. And that's not true. So you have to do a lot of groundwork, figure out the country, figure out how your technology works and fits into it. And once you do that, then you look for the agents and all. Because then at least you know what you want.
Mm-hmm. Some companies have commented that this is a market for patient investors. And India is relationship-based.
Yes.
What are the best practices in terms of building the relationship with India?
Well, like you said, you have to come here regularly. Even better would be if you open your own office, put one person here and do what I did. Use the Canada Trade Services. The staff you have across India are brilliant. It's
the Trade Commissioner Service, you mean?
Absolutely. It's literally like having a marketing office in every city. Once you explain to them what you want, you'll find them to be very intelligent, very understanding, have great knowledge about the local markets, and they will find you the meetings that you require. After that, it's your game, whether you can convince the client, but at least you get in the door.
This is amazing because you're right. Having someone in the market may make the big difference. India is a large country. How do you see that being scalable for your own business, in fact, but any Canadian companies?
Yeah. India is a very price-conscious market. Even if you have a niche product, you will be able to scale it up if you can manufacture it in India. If you can, to some extent, you don't have to manufacture the entire thing. If you can manufacture some of it, it will help you reduce your prices. So you're competitive with the Chinese suppliers. I have found that in India, people would prefer a Canadian, a European, or an American product than over a Chinese one, if the prices are reasonably competitive, simply because they are concerned about the quality and the life cycle costs, which Canada definitely has an edge on. So if you can get that under control, you can't ship everything. Some products may be shippable, okay, but not every product is shippable. Some of them are expensive, some are heavy. There are various issues. So if you can do that, then scalability should not be a problem.
And depending on the sector and the product, I mean, when you have 1.4 billion people, right, the scale becomes quite considerable.
Sure. And if you have a product that's only for an urban area, for example, fair enough. We have 35% of the population in urban areas, but by 2050, it'll be 50%. So your market is only going to expand. Small towns will become big towns will become cities. So there's always a new door opening.
It's true. India is the land of possibilities and high potential. So indeed, Canadian companies should consider the market.
Sure.
So any last advice for any Canadian companies considering the Indian market?
be patient. That is probably the best advice I can do. And do your homework. You do your homework. I can't think of a sector in India that is not growing right now and is not looking for something innovative, simply because, India was one step back. So we have a chance to leap forward. We don't have to go through all the mistakes and the in-between steps that other countries did. We can literally leap. And across Canada, there are technologies that have not entered this market as yet. So there's a lot of potential. So just come here, figure out if your system can work here, and work at it.
Where did you study, and what were you hoping to be when you grew up?
Sure. I studied at the University of Toronto and then at the University of Texas. I'm a petroleum geologist. Unfortunately or fortunately, I grew up in those parts in the 80s, and Indiana Jones was in the theaters. I just loved it. And 92, I got an offer from the Archaeological Survey of India. Why don't you come back to India to dig with us a 5,000-year-old city in Gujarat? I thought about it for a grand total of 1 week. I quit my job, flew back to India, and I've been here ever since.
Wow.
I dug 3 5,000-year-old cities in India, 1 in Gujarat and 2 in Rajasthan. Had the amazing time living out in the middle of nowhere, dealing with scorpions and snakes.
Did you have the hat as well?
I did indeed. I didn't have the whip, but I did have the hat. I did indeed.
Oh, I love this story.
It was a lot of fun. It was in remote areas. And actually, think about it now, a lot of what I went through in those years helped me today in Clearfoot, because I interacted with villagers in remote areas. And I got to know them and understand how they lived and all. And that actually had an application a couple of decades later, which I never expected.
We are the sum of our experiences.
Indeed.
And more. What drives you every morning? You get up, and what do you want to see for India and for yourself?
I'm unusually fortunate in that I work for a Canadian company that does something that really, really has a dramatic impact on people's lives. I am very fortunate on that. I have always tried to make people's lives better in whatever small ways you can, whether it's water related or sanitation or solar or wind. Sustainable ways of doing things are really the only way to go in the world we live in today. And when you see the change in people's lives who had nothing, but knew that there was more, but never knew how to get there, and see them, their lives improve. If there's anything that keeps you going through good times and bad times, that's it.
Excellent. So you're improving the lives of rural India, one village at a time.
Absolutely.
Sanjay, thank you so much for taking the time joining me on the show. I really appreciated your openness and frankness about how you continue to install toilets around India and you make India more sanitary sound. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Don't miss next week's episode, where we speak with Neera Nundi, an Indo-Canadian who decided to come back to India and accelerate its development, one NGO at a time. Hope to have you there.
We are thrilled that you shared this time with us today. We'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on our social media channels. On Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, we are at Canada in India. You can listen to all our episodes wherever you get your podcasts, so please do subscribe. Thank you. Merci. Dhanyavad.